What's the strangest family tradition you've encountered when visiting someone else's home? Story 1. It was ES Sunday. My family was visiting church friends because they had kids the same age as us. We were sent to the basement where we sat. We did nothing. They had a rule that you couldn't watch TV, listen to music, read, or even do homework on Sunday. We were that bored we asked about homework. They literally sat and did nothing on Sunday after church. We never went back. I think my parents even thought it was a little weird. Story 2. Hot dog time. My buddy in middle school had like 4 or 5 other siblings, and occasionally they'd do this activity for dinner called hot dog time. Each child was given a paper plate with a bun and plain hot dog. Condiments were hidden around the house like Easter eggs. There was a countdown, and his parents would shout, "Relish, set, go." Then we'd run off and try to find the condiments we wanted. "I got mustard," would be called out. So if we wanted mustard, we'd have to go get some mustard before continuing the hunt. "I got ketchup," echoed through the house, but I didn't like ketchup, so I always skipped it. If someone dropped a hog dog while running around, everyone would chant, "Don't cry over spilled dogs." Then they'd be given a cold one as punishment. I once had to eat the cold hot dog. Story 3. My wife's family has a chant they do for anyone opening presents, so birthdays and Christmas presents. Every single grandchild, and there are a lot of them, added their own line to the chant when they were 3. Every line also has added gestures to go with it. Nothing like a room full of adults yelling D, 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 D while pointing at the nearest ceiling fan. My favorite is probably making siren noises while doing a low-level headbang, though. It takes 2 to 3 minutes and they do it before every single person opens their first gift. Thankfully, it's been toned down as it used to be done every single time for every single gift. In a group of over a dozen people, that first Christmas was hell. And let me tell you, I did that chant in full every single time, wondering about my life choices. Still married, though, and they're great people. Story 4. My uncle does real gifts for everyone on Christmas, but then you get something random, too. This year, I got a piece of toast. He toasted a piece of bread, stuck it in a Ziploc, and stuck that in the gift bag with some much-appreciated gift cards. It's fun when someone brings a new partner over and they're so confused. I've gotten zip ties, a turkey baster, I think one partially used 9-volt battery, or it was a package of 2 that had one left, I can't remember. All of them have been useful at some point, especially the 9-volt BC. My smoke detector needed a new battery almost immediately after LOL. My kid even stole the piece of toast when he was hungry and found it in the gift bags. It was early the next morning, before the sun was even up, and I forgot it was in there. He said it was actually really good. There was no butter or anything on it, LOL. It's a cute tradition, and I can't wait for my kid to be old enough to get one, but he's still young enough that he's not even really aware of the joke right now. Story 5. Years ago, Thanksgiving at a friend's house. When the table got set up and we all sat down, the Westminster Auntie Dog Show was playing on a small 13-inch TV VCR combo on a buffet table at the head of the table. When I started to speak general table conversation, I was sheed and told, like I was an idiot, "TV is on," and they pointed to the TV. Not a word was uttered the entire meal, just all 10, 12 people around the table, all watching the dog show on this tiny TV while serving themselves in silence. Later on, my friend said it wasn't so much that they worshiped television as I had accused them of, but that years ago, the fighting around the table got so bad that the rule became no talking while the TV was on. So that worked. And so when the TV was on in the room, nobody was allowed to speak. This eliminated all the snippy side comments that turned into verbal brawls, I guess. Other than that, they seemed like a nice family. Story 6. They all got up at like 7 a.m. sharp, showered and dressed for the day, and then went downstairs to eat breakfast together at the table. I guess that's not weird in of itself. Well, it was for me. The weird thing is that apparently they didn't inform guests of that. I slept over said friend's house when I was 11, 12, wondered where my friend had wandered off to when I woke up. I came downstairs still in my pajamas, hair unbrushed, to find them at the fully set up table finishing up. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, orange juice, the works. The parents shot me a dirty look. They said I couldn't eat at the table because there wasn't enough room and they only made enough for their family. They offered me a bowl of cereal instead, LOL. I wasn't even allowed to take a shower because I didn't bring any toiletries, and they didn't have any to spare. I went home hungry and in my pajamas never went back. Story 7. We have the werewolf seat. My father reserved it for people that were new to the family circle, new boyfriends or family friends. He figured that if a werewolf attacked, it would eat the new person in that seat. He would calmly tell the would-be partner or friend that they would be the first to go when the werewolf showed up. It was quite the icebreaker. My dad's insane and wonderful. Story 8. Maybe not the strangest after reading the rest of this thread, but my childhood best friend had a couch nobody was allowed to sit on. It was all white and had plastic sheets over it. I sat on it one day while putting my shoes on to leave his house and go out to play. His dad proceeded to berate me and tell me that the couch was just for show and nobody was allowed to sit on it. I have no idea why that was the case. Who the has furniture you're not allowed to sit on, especially when it's covered in protective plastic? Story 9. So not necessarily a tradition, but my friend thought it was. She comes over once a week and has for almost a year. Every evening I use an old laptop to charge my vape, basically using it as a portable charger. The thing is though, it has to be open and on, which gets annoying, so I cover it with a towel. She apparently never saw me plug my vape into it, so for months she thought I just brought out a, ceremonial laptop and covered it with a towel. I'm amazed she still kept coming over, and even more surprised she just rolled with it. Story 10. I went to dinner at an older couple's home in the late 90s. They invited my whole family. They had classical music playing, candles lit, little treats on silver platters. They owned a few paintings from famous artists. The whole night was like a fairy tale dream. Soft light, plush furniture, no television in sight. The man even got my chicken plant worker country dad wrapped up in a conversation about Monet painting his wife on her deathbed. I thought that's what life should look like, just perfect. We say our goodbyes. It's after 11 p.m. Taking our fill of cheesecake puffs and amaretto, it was what the French do, so my parents were cool with it. We get into our rusty Buick LeSabre and pull out of the driveway. Our car slips in the ice and gets stuck in the debris on the side of the road. My sister and I walk up the driveway to knock on the door and ask to use their phone to call our uncle with four-wheel drive to come get us. The couple were watching an Adam Sandler movie, Happy Gilmore, I think, and wearing sweatpants already. Suddenly there was a huge tube television on a rolling cart underneath the impressionist paintings. The man answered the door and had a Budweiser in his hand. All the candles were out and the bright lights were on. I called my uncle and just stood there. The couple said we were welcome to sit on the porch until my uncle came. They ushered us out of the house as soon as I hung the phone up, turned off all the lights, including the porch lights. Me and my sister slid down the driveway, telling each other we would never tell our parents what we just saw. Story 11. My wife and I would occasionally have dinner with this family who had a large dog. While eating dinner, they would all stick a piece of food between their own teeth and get the dog to eat it out of their mouth, all of them. It was some weird trick they taught the dog and did it every dinner. They asked us to do it too, which was even weirder. Story 12. 40 years ago, friend's Bulgarian mom gets McDonald's for dinner. Yay! Sets table like it's a major holiday. Okay, whatever. Takes all the food out of the wrappers and puts in plates. Sure, classy. That's cool. Sits down so it's time to dig in. I pick up my Big Mac like a normal person and feel eyes upon me. Everybody else is eating their sandwich with a fork and knife. I just couldn't. Ate it with my hands and shrugged. Oh, same friend would bring sandwiches to school with 1/2 thick slice of cold cut meat and 1/2 thick slice of cheese. My mom buys a few pounds of uncut deli meat at a time and slices it herself. That looks so unappetizing. Remember, it's the 80s with brown paper bags, no fancy cooled bags. So that slab of American cheese was melty and surely affixed it to the top of friend's mouth like glue. Weird. Story 13. Wasn't my encounter. A friend of mine told me about the first time they stayed at their partner's in-laws for a holiday to spend the night. The place wasn't spacious, which was fine, and the partner's mother used a sound machine to fall asleep, something a lot of people do. I do that. My kids do. Fan sound, ocean sound, it's fairly common. What they discovered, too late, was that the mother of the house went to sleep every night listening to vacuum cleaner noise, and not a handheld whirring one, more like a big industrial-sounding suck machine. She would turn it on before bed, and the gentle calm was assaulted with loud pipe exhaust and squealing belts. When my friend asked their partner why they didn't at least warn them, they told them they hadn't thought it was a big deal. Story 14. As a teen, my family and I went to the house of one of my dad's work friends, who was a widow, and she had 2 daughters for dinner. I noticed that she treated Hone daughter much better than the other, the older one. It was really strange. After I went home, I told my parents that I noticed that happening. My mom got quiet and told me that she can't tell me why that was, because I was too young to understand, and I might get upset. I told her that I am old enough to handle it, and if I get upset, that's my business. Then she told me that the elder daughter was treated better because she was the actual daughter of the woman, and the other daughter was actually the daughter of that woman's best friend. And a situation arose where her husband had an affair with the friend, and the daughter was the result of the affair. Her husband and friend ended up in a car accident and were both killed, and she left the child to her friend. This girl was a permanent reminder of the infidelity, and a reminder that her mother's affair is the reason her friend's husband is no longer living. Being like 14, 15 at the time, I was absolutely shocked by this. It felt very soap opera. I was watching soaps and telenovelas at the time, so it felt like a plot from there. But I felt so sad for the friend's daughter, having to live in the aftermath of a situation she had no part in causing. Story 15. In high school, I gave a buddy a ride home after football practice. His mom asked me to stay for dinner. I sit down with the family, my buddy, his mom, dad, and brother. They're having a roast and potatoes. There's also a 2-liter of Coke on the table. After a few minutes, I'm thirsty, so I ask where they keep their glasses. The dad tells me, "We just drink out of the bottle," and takes a swig of Coke. He passes it to the younger brother, who also drinks from it, and he hands it to me. I just said, "Oh, I'm good." I ate and got the heck out of there. Story 16. In middle school, friend's mom invited me to come over for dinner before we would leave for a concert, which was nice. But I found it just a little odd that it was the night the 2 kids of the house had to make dinner as a chore, and I was expected to help since I was a kid too. I guess it could be a cultural disconnect because in my house, my mother would have cut her hand off before asking a guest to do work. If I had school friends over, chores were postponed, or if it was time sensitive, my mom would either ask my friend to wait 5 minutes for me or do it herself because guests. Story 17. Once I was at my neighbor's house, which was huge and worth millions. She was the top producer in a MLM, and they were all about appearances, so their clothes, cars, everything were flashy. But in the kitchen cabinets were just paper plates, flatware, and cups. She's like, "Yeah, I hate washing dishes." Story 18. Strange? My in-laws invite like 40 people over for Christmas or Thanksgiving, only have enough food for like 20 people, and watch all the outsiders starve while the blood family knows to rush the food trays and load up their plates like gluttons. Needless to say, I have not spent another holiday with them in over 10 years. Love having to leave a family event to go to Jack in the Box. Story 19. Can binge drinking count as a family tradition? I'm talking about those parties when you go in and at first you're like, "Oh wow, that's a lot of alcohol." And then a few hours in, you're like, does my friend come from a family of functional alcoholics? I hope I don't come off as judgmental. It's just strange when you mostly hang out with people who don't drink much to see how much actual binge drinking is normalized in some families. Oh, and also, some of the older generations haven't gotten the memo that it's not cool anymore to pressure people to drink. That might be what bothers me most about it. Story 20. Unseasoned food at Christmas like overcooked unsalted pasta, a ton of Hellmann's mayo, and frozen mixed vegetables left to thaw out as you stir it in. Shaking paprika over the pumpkin with the ferocity of gentle parenting because you don't want it too spicy. Being astonished at the idea of adding whole grain mustard to a dressing. The strangest one is that my in-laws have is the tradition of treating my husband like making him the butt of every joke, delivering snide comments about him and his interests, and then roasting him for never visiting. Story 21. My ex and her family will not go to concerts for any band without all wearing shirts of the band. They invited me to a Fall Out Boy show once, and my ex, still wife at the time, asked me to pick out a shirt from their merch site to order so I would have something to wear. She was disgusted when I said I didn't really want to buy one. Her mom and sister also seemed pretty annoyed that I was comfortable going to that show in a shirt that I actually wanted to wear. She then explained that whenever they buy tickets to a show, the very next thing they do is buy the band's shirts to wear. You'd think these were like the front row superfan kind of people, but when it came to the actual tickets, they always bought the cheapest ones way in the back and stood quietly for the entire show, maybe quietly singing along if they knew enough of the lyrics. Story 22. I went to an ex's family Christmas. Now, my family is small. Like for years and years, there was just 3 of us. Me, my mom, and my sister. I have aunts, uncles, and cousins too, but none of us get along and haven't seen each other in a couple of decades. We didn't argue and fall out dramatically. Just after my grandparents died, we didn't have enough in common to bother staying in touch. This family had about 30 people over, and they all seemed to like each other. They had multiple family group chats while I've never had a cousin's phone number. Story 23. One for my husband. My family does a Thanksgiving lasagna instead of the traditional meal. My mom hated all the food fuss, so I suggested making lasagna instead one year. It stuck until I left home, and my mom will always make one if we visit for the holiday and vice versa. My husband was baffled at first, but has loved the tradition. Doesn't matter if it's homemade or store-bought, just depends on what we feel like doing each year. Story 24. Ate a meal with an Asian family when I was in high school. When I finished, I got up to wash my plate. The family laughed because my buddy was still eating. They said that if anyone was still eating when someone washed their plate, the one still eating would never marry. Buddy never got married. True story. Also how I learned to eat crabs and rice with my hands. Story 25. All I can think of right now are 2 things from a former friend's house. This is from back in middle school, high school, in the late 90s and early 2000s. One, we were in her kitchen looking for snacks and I asked if I could have something. Nope, it was her dad's. This was unfathomable to teenager me, as in my house food belonged to everyone. First come, first serve. She also didn't really snack, like ever. I would always end up hungry as hell when we hung out at her place. I eventually learned to bring my own stash. Don't get me wrong, they had food, but it was mostly for actual meals. It wasn't a money issue. They just didn't snack or go for seconds. 2. Sometime in high school, she and her mom got in an argument over something. You know you've been good friends with someone for a long time when their mom is comfortable yelling at them in front of you, LOL. At some point, her mom mentioned being mad at herself for something or other. Back then, this concept has never occurred to me. In all my experience up until that moment, if someone was mad or upset someone or something else made them angry, someone yelling at you, clearly it's your fault. Ergo, if I was angry at someone, it had to be their fault. This one has been the most helpful in life. Story 26. My family has the strange ones, LOL. Tonight is New Year's. Most of my family, the ones that follow the family tradition, will get an apple and shove as many quarters in it as they can, and it goes to the first male that enters the house after midnight. I have read a male has to be the first to walk through the door after New Year's because it's good luck. The apple, I don't know, must be my family tradition. We have some old traditions and beliefs, and a good bit go back 5+ generations. We got some scary ones too. Not traditions, just beliefs. Story 27. My husband's family Christmas. My mother-in-law passes out all the gifts to each person. They say go, and everyone chaotically tears into their gifts, not looking at who they are from, not saying thank you, tossing gifts into a pile. It's all over in like 30 minutes, and then they go on with their day. This isn't kids either. This is grown adults in their 40s, 70s, and 90s. I was so overwhelmed. We haven't been back. I'd spent hours making my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law a photo album of family photos, and they just ripped into the package and tossed it aside. Didn't even say thanks. When I asked my husband about it, he shrugged and said that's just how they do it. Story 28. Babysat for a family once that had recently bought a turkey for a pet. Apparently the store told them to feed the turkey corn, but didn't get any more specific. These people were city folks newly transplanted to our rural area, so they didn't know dry, cracked corn for animal feed was a thing. They were feeding their turkey canned corn. I grew up on a hobby farm with a few turkeys and was so incredibly confused when they told me to give their turkey a can of corn for dinner. That was 20 years ago, and I still think about it frequently, LOL. Story 29. I dated this girl and was invited to dinner. Kind of a big deal, I guess. Everyone has their own fork, but they all shared a single knife. Family of 13 sharing a single knife. They put it on the lazy Susan in the middle of the table and took turns, sometimes fighting about who got to use it next. Thankfully, they did not serve a meal that required a spoon. They used 2 spoons and took turns sharing those as well. Mostly mom and dad would keep 1 spoon between them and everyone else shared the other one. They rarely had meat to cut because they were so poor, and all the kids thought it was normal to share a knife and spoon. The mom didn't like washing all those extra things, but she really never did anything because she had her kids do all the work anyways. They are the hell out of cereal though, boxes and boxes of that sweet crap. Story 30. My husband grew up in a 1,400 SF3 bedroom raised ranch, and the kids were not allowed to walk into the living room. When we started dating, I didn't know the rule and walked into the living room, with shoes no less. And I thought my future brother-in-law was going to have a heart attack. I thought he was kidding when he said no one was allowed in the living room. The house was so small and the living room was most of the second floor. So crazy. Story 31. In college, I visited my friend's family. Before eating, everyone clutched their utensils upright in their fists and slammed them down on the table, repeatedly chanting, "We are Romans, we are Romans." I knew that the family was Italian-American, but I didn't realize there was such a hierarchy among people from different regions. They told me that Romans had the highest prestige. Story 32. There was a Reddit thread once. Maybe it was a AIATA. Girlfriend or fiancé went to partner's home for a holiday, think Christmas, and they had a tradition where they all swapped underwear and had to wear them. She opted out and left the holiday when they got upset about her not participating. I think that trumps it for me. Story 33. Oh, I have one for this. When I was a wee one, there was this one time I was being watched by my mom's best friend's family. We were all hanging out in the living room, kids on the floor, parents on the couches. The dad was eating M&Ms, my favorite. I asked him as politely as I could muster if I could have a few. I was blatantly ignored. I asked him again, not sure if he heard me. This time, the whole household burst out laughing and chiding me. "Don't beg. You'll teach the dog bad habits," was repeated at me a few times by the mom, both kids, and they all had this eating smile like they caught me with my hand in the cookie jar. I was just really confused by the whole reaction, but apparently, that's handled kids asking for things in that household. Story 34. Seemed strange the first time it happened, but my cousin's family all sings the doxology for grace at the beginning of a family meal. They were hosting Thanksgiving the year I turned 10, and all my father's brothers and sister and their children, about 60 people in all, were there. That year it was only the one family singing, 8 in all that were singing, but in future years we all did. Standing around the table, heads bowed, hand folded, singing. Every family had some choir members. We're all musically trained, so even the non-vocalists are not bad to hear. Even remembering it now, 50 years later, it's kind of moving. I was at a family funeral last year, and I mentioned it to one cousin, sort of as a remembrance of the deceased. Of course, she got up to eulogize and led off by singing the doxology. Participation wasn't universal, but she wasn't alone. Another cherished memory. Story 35. I babysat for a family who had literally no spices in their entire kitchen. Before leaving, the dad said to make the kids tuna sandwiches for lunch, and to me, that means tuna with mayo and a load of seasoning to liven it up. They didn't even have pepper. After opening every single cupboard in the place, I found an ancient container of Italian spice mix, oregano, basil, thyme, etc., and managed to make it so these children weren't eating straight canned fish on bread. Watching the faces of the 3 kids when they bit into simple tuna sandwiches was heartrending. No child should be raised on a diet that doesn't have any type of pizzazz. Story 36. Had one sit-down round the table dinner with a friend's family growing up. After dinner, you could not be excused until you drank a 16 ounces glass of milk. No rhyme or reason. Well, none given either. The mom got up after the dad surveyed everyone's plates to make sure you cleared it, nodded to the mom, and she went to the kitchen and brought back a gallon of milk and glasses. Poured, passed them out, and the dad said, "You can be excused when you're done." Once I told my mom, she didn't allow me to stay for dinner ever again. I can understand water, but milk? Story 37, the kids' cake table. For the birthdays of younger children, there would be 2 cakes, one for adults and one for the kids. The kid cake would be put directly on a table with a plastic tablecloth. After everyone sang to the child whose birthday it was, all the people who wanted to, mostly the kid and their friends, would eat the cake off table using their bare hands. It was horrendous and glorious and messy, and they had to hose down all the kids afterwards. If I was a young kid, I probably would find this a very fun experience. I don't know if parents were warned that their kids would come back dripping wet and stained by frosting. The adults, and high school me, ate the other cake that was just for adults that was cut up and served normally. Once all the kids were done gorging themselves on cake, the plastic tablecloth was bunched up, and whatever remained of the kids' cake was thrown out. Story 38. My husband's family, except him. He always found it disgusting, just tried to ignore it, and didn't have the confidence to say it was disgusting until I came around. Not only stirring food with a spoon they keep licking, but actually making a point of it because they're sharing the love by stirring their spit into the food they're serving. Even worse when it's something like potato salad that doesn't get cooked afterward and they're using their unwashed hands instead of a spoon. Also, I'm not sure if it's considered strange. From my experience, many people here on Reddit think like this is okay and or normal. But they have a policy of never returning dishes empty and clean. You're supposed to return it full of food for the owner. No thanks, I'm going to assume it's there to cover up a half-ass washing because it's a hell of a lot easier to just shovel food into a bowl. Story 39. My stepmother's family all get together at her grandmother's house every Christmas. Said grandmother makes a cake, always chocolate, always very dry, with Happy Birthday Jesus written on it. And everyone has to stand and sing Happy Birthday to Jesus before we could eat dinner. No one was allowed to open any Christmas presents, till the next day, as it was Jesus' birthday and not a day for us. I stopped showing up to those events shortly after reaching adulthood. Story 40. All right, so I was at my Indian friend's house for dinner and his mom kept passing me food. At first, I thought it was just a polite thing, the usual, take some more, but then it got wild. You have hardly eaten anything, she says. I grabbed another bite, then she's like, that's all you need, more. I was so full at this point, I swear I just wanted to scream, stop, I'm full. But instead, I just kept nodding, eating, praying my stomach wouldn't explode. Story 41. So I went to watch The Lion King with my buddy at his place. We were in 9th grade, His mom had put on the TV with a DVD. She went to take a shower, but when she came out, she was all wet and wearing a towel under her waist. Well, let's just say her boobies were showing, and she was drying and walking around the house like nothing out of the ordinary. My friend was totally engrossed in the movie, and I was trying to act cool and say, maybe that's just what you guys do here. Story 42. My sister and I, and our brother, and now all our spouses too, sing Second Christmas, to the tune of the chorus and Christmas wrapping on Boxing Day, or whenever we go somewhere that isn't where we woke up on Christmas morning. Our parents divorced when we were teens, and it was how we got through the transition of having to go to different places to see first each parent, but now it works for visiting in-laws. It's been over 15 years, and at this point it's more a compulsion than anything else. The same tune works for It's My Birthday, and I'm pretty sure my husband sang a variant on our wedding day. Story 43. I grew up in a poor immigrant community in NYC and moved to a well-off suburb in HS. Became friends with this guy down the road and went to his house. We went upstairs to get snacks, and he opens the dishwasher, which had all his snack in there. Bags of chips, Gushers, candy bars, popcorn, and anything else you could image. I grew up in an apartment and never seen a dishwasher until a month earlier in our new home. I was blown away that this is where they kept the junk food. I was also shocked at how much there was in there, as both racks were filled. His mother allowed this to take place and washed everything by hand. He ended up living at home until some girl got pregnant and he had 3 kids with her, who were anchor babies. He then got a job for the first time in his life, but his parents paid the rent on the house as he was making minimum wage. Anyway, don't spoil your kids. Story 44. I love my in-laws dearly, but this drives me nuts. They have coffee after dinner at family gatherings. Normal enough, except they will all wait until they're literally falling asleep in their chairs and have the coffee at midnight and stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. and go to the work next day exhausted and complaining. I've never understood why they won't drink the coffee before dinner to provide stamina for the evening. Story 45. When I moved in with my friend during college, I was replacing his former roommate because he moved in with his fiancée. The guy's fiancée was the niece of a famous athlete. The athlete is considered the best or one of the best to ever play his sport. The fiancée had been saving money for years to put a down payment on a home. The famous athlete gives everyone in his family $10,000 every year for Christmas. It just seems wild to me that this ultra-wealthy man hands out cash at Christmas that they rely on. They don't even see him that often because he's older now and lives in another state. It's like checks in the mail. Story 46. The year before I moved halfway across the country, my family started doing this thing where, before opening Christmas presents, they first passed around the Bible for everyone to read the next verse in a passage from it. It was weird. I never liked reading the Bible, and that year I was starting to fall out from religion. The next year I moved away. I have no idea if they continued the tradition. I've never asked. If they did, I'm glad I moved. Actually, I'm glad I moved regardless since I met my husband after moving and fully left religion behind, and my life has been much freer ever since. My husband also helped me work up the nerve to let my family know I wasn't religious anymore. They didn't take to it well, and I know they still judge me, but it's a much more honest relationship now. Story 47. Not really a tradition, but people closing their bathroom doors when they're unoccupied. Absolutely insane. Like you're just supposed to A, knock on the door. Yeah, right, what if someone's in there? Or B, just walk in. Yeah, right, what if someone's in there? So many times when I was at people's houses growing up, I would simply not use the bathroom, even if I was staying there for the night. If I absolutely had to use the bathroom, I would wait until my friend went, and then wait outside for them to come out so I knew it was unoccupied. On top of that, most who closed the doors had bathroom doors that didn't lock. I'd go in, try to lock the door, it doesn't lock, so I would just walk out and not use it because what if someone walked in? Or if it did lock and you locked it, they would just try to open it. No knock or anything, like WTF, the door's closed, you pervert. And then they'd get upset when you left the door open after like a normal person. Story 48. Had an ex whose family loved NASCAR. They each had a favorite driver, and they would show up to family events head to toe in the gear sponsors for that driver. So like the guy who loved Dale Jarrett would have a Dale Jarrett shirt for sure, but also random UPS gear counted. And my ex was a huge Jimmy Johnson fan, and so she had all kinds of JJ Lowe's merch. It was also normal to refer to the driver by their number, so they'd refer to Jimmy Johnson as 48, and they knew everyone's number. Obviously, if there was a race on, they'd all watch it. And the once or twice a year there was a race at the local track, we'd all go. Obviously, Martinsville. It was kind of fun. They all smoked and drank too, which was fun in my 20s. I didn't make it long enough in that family to have my own driver and outfit, though. Perhaps that's why it didn't work out. Story 49. Most of the traditions that my ex-husband's family had were because it was something that his younger sister wanted, LOL. For example, my ex-sister-in-law wanted Christmas morning to last longer, so when they sat down to open gifts, everybody opened one gift at a time. No one questioned it, and no one deviated from this plan. Opening gifts as adults took hours. We also could not take any family pictures until his sister had taken a shower and did her makeup and hair. So I honestly thought that this was something that his family preferred, so I would try to get up and take a shower and fix my hair and do my makeup before Christmas morning pictures. But in my case, they made fun of me for it, which I found strange because I was only following my sister-in-law's lead. Story 50. Once, I visited a friend's house and their entire family had a tradition of singing Happy Birthday in opera voices. Every single birthday. Picture a group of suburbanites belting out, "Hey, be," like they're auditioning for Phantom of the Opera, and God help you if you didn't hit your notes. Then there was the family that insisted on wearing socks at all times, even in the pool. I thought it was a joke until Uncle Rick cannonballed in with tube socks like it was completely normal. Apparently, bare feet are too intimate. Yeah, okay, Janet. Just say you've got a foot phobia and let us move on. Oh, and here's a wild one. I stayed with a family who made everyone say good night to their fridge, like it was a living entity. I thought they were trolling me, but nope, every night it was good night fridge, followed by a pat on the door. It wasn't even a fancy fridge, just a beat-up whirlpool with a magnet shaped like Florida. The beauty of family traditions is that they make no sense, but they're sacred. So you smile, nod, and say, "Good night, fridge," while silently questioning your life choices. Story 51. Not my husband, but his cousins received their stockings Christmas Eve. Santa brought the presents that were under the tree, and stockings were from the parents and other family members. Everyone got and filled stockings for everyone else, so each person would receive multiple stockings. Then Christmas dinner at midnight, and after everyone went to bed, Santa brought the gifts that were under the tree the next morning. No other households in his extended family celebrated this way, and he has no idea why his cousin's family did it that way. Story 52. Can I share one from my family? When we were kids, my mother created the doghouse. It was a doghouse cut out of red construction paper. Then she went online and picked out a dog that she thought represented each one of us in the family, including herself, and printed them out glued to cardstock with our name. It was hung up on the kitchen, and there was a small nail that you could hang the dog cards on. If someone did something bad, your dog picture got put in the doghouse. It was all in good fun, though. For example, my brother ate all the creams out of the middle of the Vienna finger cookies and tossed the cookie part. In the doghouse he went. My mom forgot she had to pick me up one time and picked me up late, so I moved her dog photo into the doghouse. My friends all thought this was hilarious and asked their parents to do it, or for a dog photo of themselves for the doghouse. Next, theme. What's a small decision you made that changed your life in a big way? Story 1. Back in middle school, my family moved from the deep South USA to northern USA. It was in the middle of the school year, and I wanted to make a good impression. I didn't want anyone to think I was a stupid redneck. When my new classmates asked me what music I liked, I blurted out the furthest from country music I could think of, heavy metal. And that set the stage for my eventual fall from grace into the seedy gothic subculture that still brings me joy to this day. Story 2. Went into a chat room one day like I'd done 100 times. I saw someone's profile and she had a pic of just her eyes. I sent her a message and said she had beautiful eyes. Her response? "Who are you? And how the hell did you get this name?" Turns out Yahoo had left her in the room ghosting for days. Next month, we'll be married 20 years. Story 3. I am retired and love to read, watch films. It got to a point where I was out of breath when walking to the letterbox. A retired friend recommended an app where you can earn points if you walked for at least 20 minutes. You get an extra point for walking 20 minutes before 9 a.m. There is a max to the number of points you can earn each day, and the goal is to walk every day. Now I'm in competition with other retirees to see who has the most points. Yes, it is like watching a snail race. As a result, my condition, breath, humor have all improved, and I still read a lot. Story 4. I chose to go to a public school when the private school I went to for years was no longer affordable, as opposed to going to a small semi-homeschooled school where all the assignments are done at home. I made a ton of friends and fit in, as opposed to the private school where I only had a couple friends and was bullied to some extent. I realized the way I was treated at the private school wasn't normal, learned some self-respect, and now I'm getting paid to go to university because of the scholarships I got from going to the public school. Story 5. I'll give the biggest one for my parents. The year is 1996, and we're moving to Colorado. They found 2 amazing homes and had to decide which one to pick. They picked the house on soil, and the home was almost condemned because of structural uncertainties when we moved 4 years later. They had to lawyer up and settle with the builders years later. Awful decision, right? If they picked the other house, my sister would have been a freshman at Columbine High School on April 20th, 1999. Story 6. Doing to IVF. Both of us met in our mid-30 ES. We're super busy with careers and life in general, and before we realized it, time was ticking. We now have an amazing 2.5 yo boy who's an absolute delight, happiest little man ever, and I genuinely love being a dad. It legit blows my mind watching him evolve into this little person with thoughts, feelings, emotions, likes/dislikes, conversations, and teaching him how to do so many things. It's given a whole new dimension to life. Story 7. Impulsively took a trip back home for a weekend in college for an old friend's birthday party I was invited to. I'm glad I did because that was the last I saw my best friend before he died of a fentanyl overdose 5 months later. If I didn't go down to that party, my last memory of him would have been him arguing with his ex-girlfriend outside of the Airbnb on vacation. Story 8. I decided to take a random weekend trip to Portland with a friend, even though I had zero plans or expectations. It was a spontaneous decision. I packed up, jumped in the car, and just went for it. That weekend turned into one of the best weekends ever. I fell in love with the city, met some of the coolest people ever, and ended up moving there a few months later. I ended up meeting my now partner on that trip too, which was the icing on the cake. All from just saying yes to something random without overthinking it. Honestly crazy how one impulsive choice can lead to a completely different outcome. Story 9. I decided to ask her number last year. No wait before that, I thought she was interested in me. No wait before that, I thought that I could do it and be successful. No wait before that, how difficult this work could be. No wait before that, I thought that maybe I'm not good enough for engineering. No wait before that, I survived that accident because I moved like 6 inches back. No wait before that, I survived at birth, which doctors thought I would not. Can't decide. I'll go with the most recent one.